Welcome to the Football Frenzy. As always, I'm Paul Valley, and this is Adam Rothgeb with me as every week. Ravens beat the Steelers 26-23 on an overtime field goal by Justin Tucker after a forced fumble by Marlon Humphrey. Big time win. The team needed to win. Look, the Steelers aren't a very good team, it seems, this year, but it's always a hostile environment going into Pittsburgh, and any win on the road in the NFL is a good win, so they were able to pull that victory out. They have a chance to be 4-2 when they head into a tough stretch in their season where they have to play Seattle and the Patriots back to back. But they do get a bye in between those games. We'll talk about that later. The good. So the Ravens got the win. Justin Tucker named Special Teams Player of the Week for his efforts, 4 of 4 field goals, 2 of 2 on extra points. Mark Ingram got his AFC leading 6th touchdown rushing. And like I said, they won the game.
Yes.
The bad. Still not getting much out of any wide receiver not named Marquise Brown. And Marquise Brown in his last 3 games only has 93 receiving yards. So that leaves much to be desired. Offensive line was porous. They allowed Lamar to get sacked 5 times.
Yes.
Each offensive lineman was responsible for allowing at least a half sack this week. Lamar Jackson has been sacked one more time each week than he was the previous week, which is not a good trend.
No, it's not.
Lamar turned the ball over 3 times. One interception was his fault. It was an ugly throw. He didn't see the defender, and he just took it right out of the air. The other 2, there's obvious pass interference on Mark Andrews, and then a ball that Nick Boyle should have caught, in my opinion. I think it was Andrews or Hurst there.
Beautiful
they
throw.
catch the ball.
Beautiful throw, yes.
Great throw, and even then, the defender didn't intercept the ball, but for some reason, Harbaugh didn't challenge.
It was, it was reviewed automatically because it was a turnover, but for whatever reason, the officiating, and I'll specifically get involved in that one a little bit later, but they chose not to overturn it for whatever reason. It looked pretty obvious to me while I was watching the game, but, there was a whole lot more bad again this week, even though we came out with the win, than there was good. And it's still a frightening trend for the Ravens moving forward in this season, especially heading into a really tough little stretch here of games that they've got to start improving.
Absolutely. And the defense, after allowing 1,033 yards in back-to-back in 2 games in a row, went out allowed 269 yards. They forced a couple of turnovers. They only have 1 sack though, only 3 quarterback hits. For comparison purposes, Nick Bosa, the rookie, on Monday night had 5 quarterback hits by himself and 2 sacks. Dominated that game, but again, we'll get to that in a little bit. The Ravens still don't have a pass rush.
No.
And they only gave up 269 yards, but they were facing a second string and then a third string quarterback for the Steelers. And it just doesn't seem like that defense is really on the same page. I really thought that they did a nice job. I think Josh Bynes helped a lot with this in covering running backs out of the backfield and covering tight ends. Only 6 receptions for 45 yards from those 2 units, which is what you want to see because that's where they've struggled all year.
Yes, Bynes, being familiar, different coordinators, but our system, the Ravens system, generally just stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
Some language might change up, some different schematic things here or there, but to have played in the system before, he came right in midweek and just jumped right in, feet first, a pick. He looked really good, real strong against the run. Looked really great in the pass, and he really solidified. Big message to Kenny Young. You got to step up, young man, or you're not going to be here very long. That's just the way it is. Ask Tim Williams how it works out for you.
Yeah, and Kenny Young was a healthy scratch
Yes.
on Sunday, and if Bynes continues to play that way, he could be a healthy scratch a lot.
Yes.
This year, which I really had a lot of hope for Kenny Young. I thought he's fast. I think he's athletic, but he just hasn't lived up to what I thought he would live up to be.
It seems like the Ravens defense just hasn't gelled together quite yet. There was always 2 or 3 holdovers every year that pretty much taught everybody exactly what they needed to know from every level of the defense. And it just seems like, for whatever reason, people are just missing something here or there. And the communication, the lack of communication, which has plagued this defense over and over and over again, every single game, basically, with the regard of the Miami game, which high school team might be able to go out there and score at least a touchdown against them. But it's something that they need to really lock up, and maybe it takes the bye week, and everybody sits down and talks about it and says, what is it that needs to be done? Maybe simplification of everything, and that gets everybody back on the same page. But something's got to happen soon, and it's got to improve rapidly if we expect the Ravens to have any kind of chance at making a deep run into the playoffs, if they make the playoffs.
Right. And look, that division is wide open.
Oh, yeah.
They're in first place by themselves at 3-2 right now, which I never thought we'd see the AFC North with 3 teams below 500, through 5 weeks of the season. It's a lot of people think 8-8 or 9-7 could win this division. I don't see it. I think the Ravens are going to win 10 games. But, at the beginning of the year, I thought they were going to win 12 games, and I saw their defense completely collapse. So, Jimmy Smith's going to be coming back. Not this week, not next week. I think he probably comes back after the bye, and I think that's what their plan has been all along. Brandon Williams coming back, and they held that team to 77 yards rushing after getting torched on the ground. It is amazing how much one player affects the running game. And for those of you that think that Brandon Williams is overpaid, look at the Ravens' rush defense when he's in the game and when he's not in the game, and it is a stark contrast.
It's bad. I mean, you might as well just put it as you go from an 8th ranked rush defense basically overall to a 28th rush defense overall. Mm-hmm. That is phenomenal production out of one player to hold a running game down as well as that man does. And because he gets to take on 2 and 3 blockers at one time and really free up any kind of linebacker or safety, whoever it may be, to come in, push the hole, and force the running back to do something he doesn't want to do earlier than he wants to do it. And it's so much better to watch that rush defense when he is on the field.
Well, and speaking of rush defense, they're going up this week against the Bengals, the second worst rushing offense in the NFL. Now, last week, Mixon had 19 carries for 93 yards. He finally had a solid game.
He looked like Joe Mixon again, pretty much. And he looked like he did last year. And it's something that, as long as our rush defense is going to act appropriately, it's something that I wouldn't be too overly concerned with, because their offensive line is pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And as long as we can contain that running game, helps us with the back end, hopefully a little bit this week, and we'll see what happens. But Cincinnati, they're hurting on that offensive side of the ball too, without their top 2 targets now.
Right, and he's speaking of AJ Green, who's going to miss yet another week. It was projected he'd probably be back by about week 7 when the season started. So right now he seems to be on that timeline. John Ross, third, he's out for the year.
Going again.
With a shoulder injury. So right now they have Tyler Boyd and a bunch of no names. Tyler Eifert somehow has managed to stay healthy this year, which through week 5 is a pretty big feat for Tyler Eifert if you know anything about him. Now look, they have the 9th ranked passing offense in the NFL. They're averaging 258 yards per game, but that's also because they're losing every game. And Andy Dalton has to go into air it out mode.
Yes.
Right? So Bengals 0-5. They've played some close games. They've lost 3 games by 4 points or less. They had a heartbreaking loss against Arizona. I think they really felt like they had their first win coming, and they just couldn't pull that game out.
Yes, the defense gave it up for them a little bit. They couldn't make the big stop when they needed to, the big play when they needed to. As dangerous as AJ Green and John Ross can be, without them on the field, Ravens fans sure well know what Tyler Boyd and his name is in Ravens lore, keeping them out of the playoffs a couple years ago. So he's no slouch himself. I mean, man's amassed, 37 receptions for over 400 yards this year. So he's not a slouch by any stretch of the imagination. And, hopefully Marlon Humphrey can lock up with him and lock him down for the game and just take care of their secondary and their third players and just sit on their throat. I want to see them sit on the throat of a team again. They just haven't done it since week 1. And I know they're capable of doing it. Mm-hmm. The offense needs to get back in gear, because the offense has slowly been declining every week. And whether or not defenses are catching up to what we're doing and we need to make a further adjustment, whatever that may be, that is true. Our rushing game was not as potent. Mark Ingram was held, under 50 yards rushing against the Steelers. Lamar had to lead us again in rushing, had to lead the Ravens again in rushing, and you don't want Lamar to have to constantly lead the team in rushing.
Well, right, and he had 14 carries for 80 yards.
It's going to be bad.
In the game on Sunday, and he might be running the ball too much. And one of the things that I saw about Lamar that really worried me is he was first read or nothing in that game on Sunday. At least that's how it looked to me. And a lot of dump offs. Took a couple of sacks he probably didn't need to take.
Yeah.
And for a guy who says that he'd rather throw than run the ball, he looked eager to run to me. Now some of those are designed.
Yes.
But there were a lot of passing opportunities where he didn't see his first read wasn't open, and he took off running when he probably didn't need to.
Yeah, the Ravens have to get back to using that middle of the field. It looks like they've gotten away from that a little bit. And I know we're all clamoring for them to use the receivers, and the receivers got to step up, and we all know this. But when you have tight ends such as a Hayden Hurst and such as a Mark Andrews, you have to exploit the middle of the field. This is a perfect opportunity to start getting Justice Hill a little bit more involved. Get him out of the backfield. Get him spread out wide. Use his quickness, his agility, his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Really stretch a team's defense and make them concerned about every possible aspect that might be on that field at any given time.
Well, and you said Justice Hill, and there's got to be something that we don't know that the Ravens have seen in practice. Maybe he's not picking up the offense. Maybe there's some ball security issues during practice sessions. I don't know, but they're not using him the way we thought they would use him. He's not getting a lot of touches. They're using him in the kick return game, which we really didn't see in the preseason.
Yeah.
And, he had that nice return.
Nice explosive return.
He got a 46-yard kickoff return, the one chance he got to return one. But if that's the main usage for him, I mean, most of the kicks in the NFL these days are touchbacks. So he's not really getting the ball in his hands too often. And maybe they're trying to keep him fresh for the second half of the season. Maybe they understand that Mark Ingram sometimes gets hurt. He's not really the guy who you give the ball to 300 times.
No.
So maybe they're trying to keep him fresh for the second half. I do expect him to get more involved in the game at some point moving forward. But it's been a surprise that we haven't seen a lot of Justice Hill.
Yeah, it's been a little questioning. But as far as, you have two... Gus Edwards was a rookie last year, but you technically have two established running backs, one very veteran running back who you really trust with the ball in his hands, and you're going to allow Justice Hill to just steadily move forward, steadily improve, let him get completely comfortable with everything that your offense is doing, and let him feel like he don't have to go out there and think about what he's doing, just go out there and play. And I'm hoping that sometime real soon we're going to see something happening with him. Well,
and especially if Lamar likes to hit those little short routes right now, if he's not getting that first read, Justice Hill would seem like somebody who could really help you.
Would be perfect out of the backfield for a dump down.
We'll see. Home game. Hopefully, Ravens get some home cooking. Hopefully, they get a dominant win here against the Bengals, because you want to be 4-2.
Yes.
Going into Seattle, because then you have that tough stretch. But we'll talk about the predictions for the game in a little bit. Browns take on the Seahawks in Cleveland this week. They were feeling phenomenal about themselves after that 40-25 drubbing of the Ravens last week. They were in first place. They were feeling like division champs. And then they go out and they lay an egg. And I love to see it. I feel like Baker Mayfield's getting a little bit of a taste of his own medicine. I'll get into that in a little bit. But Mayfield, 8 of 22. 100 yards, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, 1 loss, 1.4 quarterback rating, total QBR, 13 point something for his quarterback rating overall. He was awful. He was absolutely awful.
For you fantasy football players, you all know he scored you 0 points out of the quarterback position.
That's
which is almost impossible to do unless you get knocked out in the first quarter and you haven't done anything. But that man was silenced hard on Monday night, and you can judge by the smile on my face. Nothing brought me much more joy than to watch that happen Monday night. The 49ers team overall has kind of been a little underrated and under the radar because they play out west, and it's the 49ers. And what do we really expect out of the 49ers? We haven't heard much out of that franchise for quite some time now, but slowly, steadily, they've been building themselves up. And just like everybody else in the league, that Baker Mayfield rub me wrong attitude that he gives to everyone, he faced up against a former Ohio State player who remembers exactly what he did on his home college football field with that flag planting. He made sure to let Baker Mayfield know exactly what he thought about it. The Browns just are not working collectively. They're not a team. They are a bunch of very, very gifted, talented individuals who just have not put together how to play together yet. If they ever did, I would feel like they could be dangerous, but I don't know that they ever will. I don't know that their quarterback and Baker Mayfield really looks to be somebody who builds himself up, needs that edge. But in this league, if you have to do that as a quarterback as often as you do, I don't know that you can sustain that. I don't think you can sustain that for an entire career, and I don't think you can make a living off of how he acts as a quarterback for an entire career. Different circumstances for a wide receiver or a running back or a middle linebacker, say. It doesn't matter in that position, but when you're the face of the franchise, the owner of that offense, basically, you need to have a little bit more of a quiet calm about you and given circumstances, and I don't think he can do it.
Well, and since you're talking so much about him, I'm just going to jump right to my segment of shade here, because my segment of shade is all about Baker Mayfield. Now, look, he had all those instances in college where he just seemed like a jerk, running away from cops when he's drunk, planting the flag in the middle of the field, grabbing his crotch when Candace doesn't shake his hand. All those things. As a rookie, shows up his former head coach after he gets fired. Hugh Jackson doesn't even shake his hand, stares him down on the sideline. Throws Duke Johnson under the bus for asking for a trade request. Well, the guy is a good running back, and he was becoming third, fourth on the depth chart there.
Yes.
I get it, but and as a quarterback, you can't throw a teammate under the bus. Then you look at, he ripped the Giants for drafting Daniel Jones. Well, guess what? Daniel Jones has double the quarterback rating that you have, and he has as many passing touchdowns as you in 2 fewer starts.
Yes.
Right? Then he says, there was a clip of him last week in the huddle saying, this is our game. If we score here, then we're going to have to force Lamar to throw the ball. This is our game. Lamar has double the quarterback rating you do. Almost 3 times as many touchdowns as you do. His quarterback rating, 99.1. Yours, 68.5. To me, it's shut up and play football.
Yes.
Shut the hell up and play football. 8 of 22, 100 yards, and 3 turnovers, almost a fourth. You don't get to talk.
No.
Shut up and play football. You have Odell Beckham Jr., you have Jarvis Landry, you have Nick Chubb, and you are the worst quarterback in the NFL right now. And that's not an overstatement. 5 starts, he has the lowest quarterback rating, lowest total QBR, lowest completion percentage in the NFL. Shut up and play football.
It's about time to get humbled, and hopefully he's getting humbled if you're a Cleveland Browns fan. I don't know that you would be if you're listening to us right now, but if you believe anything other than he needs to get better or, it's Baker, it's just what Baker does, if you need to run your mouth as a quarterback, think about this. What quarterback do you ever remember in the history of the NFL has ever needed or wanted to run their mouths and disrespect other opposing players, teams, coaches, the game itself, the way this quarterback does? What quarterback has ever tried to do this and it's worked? 0. Not that I can recall. And if they have been doing it, guess what? They weren't around the league for very long, because this is what gets you beat up by opposing defenses, because they want to take your mouth and shut you up, and they want to shut you up hard. And he got a little bit more taste of that medicine on Monday night, and I feel like he's going to get just a bit more coming up here real soon.
Well, yeah, and it's going to be tough for them to get off the schneid, because they're coming home in Cleveland, but they're playing the Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson, 12 touchdowns, no picks, has not turned the ball over this year. He's one of 3 quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota is another one, and Patrick Mahomes, which doesn't surprise you, but one of 3 quarterbacks with no picks this year. They run the ball well. They have Rashad Penny. They have Chris Carson. Russell Wilson's a mobile quarterback.
Yes.
They could get their butts whooped
They
by
well
Seattle.
Could. They very well could. Seattle coming back east again. Another hard trip for them, but as we saw earlier this year, they came out to Pittsburgh and they laid a little bit on Pittsburgh there for a bit. The Seahawks defense isn't exactly what it's always been in the past. It's a little bit more of a bend, don't break kind of philosophy now for them. They give up a little bit more points than I think they'd like to. They're 23rd in the league in that with almost 20 a game. Or almost 24 a game, sorry. But it's their quarterback and Russell Wilson, who vastly underrated coming out of college, playing at MVP caliber level. He's got to be top. He's got to be top 3 at bare minimum. I mean, everybody right now, you got to be thinking Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Christian McCaffrey. That's in whatever order you want to put them in. I'm happy with. But they're in your top 3. If they're not, I don't know what you're watching on Sundays in the NFL. But he just has taken his team over, and he's made it, and they've molded it around Russell Wilson's personality, and they've made it his. And he's taken complete ownership of this, and he's really demonstrating exactly what he is worth to a franchise. And the big contract he got before this season started, it's not showing any wear and tear on him at this point in time. He doesn't look like he's playing with any pressure. He's gone out there carefree. He's moving the ball down the field. He's making big plays with his arm. He's making big plays with his legs when he needs to. And his defense is doing just enough for him right now. And if that defense and that running game come to Cleveland and shut them up again, it really puts Cleveland behind the 8 ball.
Especially having to play the Patriots right after
right after that. They're 2 tough games for the Browns coming up for them. I'm looking forward to these next 2 games. Hopefully they're 2 losses.
Absolutely. And then on the other side of it, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ravens just beat them 26-23. We talked about that in depth. They're playing the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. I do not see how the Chargers don't just dominate this football game.
You would think. One would think. I mean, you would expect that, but you dive a little closer into the numbers and look at the numbers a little bit between both of these teams. And because of the injuries that the Chargers have sustained, both offensively and defensively now, I know they got Melvin Gordon back, and that'll substantially help them a little bit more with their running attack. Austin Eckler is a fine backup running back. Not as good a runner as Melvin is, but just as good, if not better, out of the backfield.
15 receptions last week.
He is phenomenal out of the backfield. But diving in, pretty evenly matched teams. Pretty evenly matched teams. I mean, that between their offensive and defensive outputs on the year, I mean, only swayed a little bit, yard here, maybe a point there, and because the Chargers have been hurting, and Nick Bosa hasn't gotten off yet. It just doesn't seem like the Joey Bosa, I'm sorry. Joey Bosa, since we were talking Nick Bosa earlier, Joey Bosa hasn't really gotten himself quite started yet. The defense is lacking a little bit something now. The injuries have taken their toll, and they lost a bad one last week. I mean, it's not a game they couldn't. I mean, how do you lose to the Broncos? The Broncos have looked like trash all year. I mean, they've looked lost. Their defenses looked like trash all year, but the Chargers go and they lay an egg against the Broncos and lose 20-13. And Chargers are hard to understand.
Well, here's the thing about that game. Devlin Hodges is the starting quarterback.
Yes,
it is. The Steelers are down to their 3rd string quarterback. His backup is going to be Paxton Lynch, who they just called up off the practice squad. Now, this is a guy who, to pull out my inner Chris Collinsworth, that the Broncos took in the 1st round of the draft a few years ago, and now he's a practice squad quarterback. That we could talk about that another day. I don't understand how that happens. How do you miss so badly on a guy?
It's pretty bad, isn't it?
But, they have Phillip Rivers. He's got almost 1,500 yards passing, only 7 touchdowns with 4 picks. Keenan Allen's an all-world wide receiver. So you mentioned Eckler and Melvin Gordon coming out of the backfield. That's a 2-headed monster. They can get Justin Jackson back into the fold. He's nursing a calf injury right now, but that's a solid number 3 guy who can also catch some balls out of the backfield.
Yes.
Mike Williams came back from an injury, had 6 catches for 74 yards.
He looked good.
Yeah, arguably his best game. Now, he had 83 yards earlier this year, but that was on 3 catches. This was probably his most consistent game. The Steelers were helped out a lot by officiating last week. And I think that maybe that game wasn't as close as it felt at the time because the officiating gave them some possessions they probably didn't deserve. You had something you want to say about
this?
that?
This is an epidemic in the NFL. Anybody in the NFL, anybody who wants to at the NFL, talk to the NFL, call the NFL offices, every NFL fan should be doing this. The officiating in this league has gotten pathetic, and by pathetic I mean if there is a poll of how you want to rate what is great and what is wherever the pole is sticking in the ground. At the bottom of the poll, that's where this officiating has gotten to.
It's bad.
It is a travesty to watch missed call after minute. I'm not talking about just the Ravens or against just a couple of offsides penalties in that game on Sunday with the Steelers. They called an offsides penalty for people being in the neutral zone who weren't in the neutral zone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they're looking at. I don't see what they're looking at. You see a ball blatantly hit the ground and move back up into the linebacker's arms, and they call it an interception. You had a wide receiver on a Hail Mary pass, Mike Evans, get tackled in the end zone. Tackled in the end zone earlier this season. They reviewed it. Didn't overturn it. What is the point of having the review for a pass interference call if you're never going to overturn it? The whole point of being able to do this is so you can get it right. And coaches are now starting to figure this out, which is why John Harbaugh did not even bother trying to challenge the pass interference against Mark Andrews on that one interception. There's a blatant pass interference, but you're not going to challenge it because coaches have already gotten the hint. Why am I going to waste my challenge?
Right.
John Harbaugh mentioned this in the presser. Why am I going to waste a challenge on something? It's not going to get overturned. You're seeing an epidemic of missed call after missed call after missed call that is starting to hurt the product on the field. It's really starting to affect how well the game is played. The fans are upset with it. The players are upset with it. The coaches are upset with it. But it seems like the only people who aren't upset with it are the ones who always make all the money, the owners, who need to get upset with it because sooner or later, eventually, now everybody says you'll never stop watching NFL. If the NFL becomes to the point to where this officiating is always going to be the way it is right now, trust me, people are going to start tuning out because you cannot watch this bad of a product continuously every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday with missed call after missed call. That changes how a game is played, changes how a game's outcome is turned. You can't have it. You can't continue. One bad call here or there, get it. Human error happens. 4 and 5 every single game for every single team. Yeah, something's got to be done. Something's got to be done quick.
Every kickoff, every punt, there's a flag.
Yep.
You mentioned people being called for lining up in neutral zone. They were nowhere near it. But yet they miss when Hardman for the Chiefs lined up on the defensive side of the football for an 83-yard touchdown.
Isn't that funny?
And they missed that. You know, it's you see a big play, and the first thing you're thinking is, please no flag.
Where's that yellow little marker on the bottom of my screen to see if I see that flag come up? Because as soon as you see a big play, I want to get excited. I want to jump up and down. I want to clap my hands. I want to. Well, hold on, people.
It's a delayed reaction.
I don't know what. And as soon as you see the flag, but is it against us? Is it against them? I have no idea. I was watching the play. I didn't see anything happening, but maybe something did happen. That I don't even know what to make of it anymore. It makes it hard to watch, especially when it's stopped. Every couple of plays, there's a flag. There is no flow of a football game anymore for most instances. You get lucky here or there. You'll get a couple of games where maybe 6, 7 total flags thrown, or maybe I should say accepted. Maybe only 10 or 11 thrown the entire game, and that's a good game now.
Mm-hmm.
Most times, you're getting at least 20 flags thrown on the field every single game, and upwards of 13, 14, 15 getting accepted. Don't tell me it's just the players, because the officiating has a lot, and I mean a lot, to do with what we're seeing with the flow of the game, and nobody wants to see these damn zebras. I'm tired of it.
And this is coming from two guys who report on the Ravens, who are one of the least penalized teams in the league. Now, some of them have been egregious, and we'll admit to that, and we may
yeah.
You know what I mean? But the fact of the matter is, this is what you're talking about when you say that it could become an unwatchable thing, because you don't want to watch games where you see a 30-yard pass that's negated by somebody who went like this to a defender. You know, and it's bad when somebody who has been helped out by referees his entire career, and Tom Brady is sending out tweets saying, I don't even want to watch this game anymore.
I can't watch it anymore.
I can't watch this game because the penalties are ridiculous. And that's Tom Brady.
Your own face of the NFL wants to tell you he doesn't want to watch your product on a given night. That should tell you something. Mm-hmm. You don't want to see bad officiating. mistakes happen. We get it. We watch sports all of our lives. Every sport, baseball, football, hockey, basketball, whatever case may be. Human error is part of every sport.
Yep.
But to sit there and have blatantly missed calls, you mentioned Hardman, just 2 other calls in the Chiefs game alone. Peanut was tackled in that game on the touchdown pass to Shaney McCoy. No call. Patrick Mahomes gets hit after throwing the ball, lays on the ground, has time to get up, look at the referee who's standing right next to him, say something to him, and then the referee decides he wants to throw out his penalty flag.
More than 5 to 10 seconds after the play is over.
That right there is what you call a bad optic. A bad optic that goes on pretty much in every single game that we watch. In any instance, not just the Ravens. Every game. And I'm pretty sure everybody out there who watches more than 1, 2, 3 games a week knows. You see it every single game. There's a bad optic. There's a bad look. There's at least 3 or 4 bad missed calls, or just blatantly, I don't care. It's almost like they don't care. Like, what do we have to worry about? We're not fixing anything.
Right, and they don't have any repercussions for their actions.
Officials need to start being made available. Let them start answering the questions to the media after every single game and see what happens with how they handle themselves on the field and what kind of flags they don't throw, because they'll start getting that pressure that every single person who participates on the field but them has to answer to.
Absolutely. Now, look, moving on. We're going to get our predictions in. Usually I let you go first. I'm going to go first today.
All right.
Bengals. They've lost 3 games by 4 points or less. We mentioned that earlier. One of those games they lost on a last-second field goal. Another game they lost because their kicker missed an extra point and a field goal. So they're not a good football team, but they've been in some games against some good teams in the Seahawks and the Bills. Probably games that they should have and could have won.
Yes.
I just don't. Right now, they don't have enough offensive or defensive weapons. I think Lamar's going to bounce back from his 3 turnover game. I think he's going to have about 200 yards passing. I think he's going to have 80 yards rushing, 3 total touchdowns. I think Ingram's probably going to have about 85 yards and a touchdown. Last week, my unsung hero was Hayden Hurst. I said he was going to catch 5 balls and a touchdown. He caught 4 balls, no touchdowns, but I think they're getting him more and more involved in the passing game, especially because no wide receiver is stepping up really. So I think you're going to see a lot of tight end work this week. I think that he and Andrews are going to combine for 10 catches and a score. And I think you're going to see the Ravens run away with this one, 34-17. Now, look, the Bengals usually provide a tough matchup for the Ravens.
Yes.
Harbaugh's 10-12 in his career against them, but there's no A.J. Green. There's no John Ross. Andy Dalton, I think, is one of the more overrated quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think with Brandon Williams back in there clogging that front line with Michael Pierce, that the Bengals' second worst rushing attack is not going to get anything going.
Yes.
And that's what I think is going to happen.
It's another thing. There's no Marvin Lewis over there on that sideline, who is always great at drawing up, stopping the Ravens on offense, and always made it difficult for Joe Flacco. Now, I view it pretty much in the same sort of light with you. I just don't see how now everybody's always wrong about something. I don't see how the Bengals compete for 60 minutes against the Ravens on Sunday. They've always been that thorn in the side that, really the Bengals, that's what we have to deal with every time we play them, is this close game, and you don't want to see it. You especially don't want to see it this week. Rushing game gets back on track. I think there's over 200 yards rushing in this game for the Ravens.
I think so too.
And I don't even think it's close. I mean, they might even push 300 if they really get on a roll. And I feel like they can. My unsung hero last week was the offensive line. They looked like trash. Absolute trash. And that's what I think helped aid the Ravens in playing so badly last week. Ravens offensive line gets back on track. My unsung hero this week, I said a little earlier, talked about him. I feel like he's going to get involved this week. Justice Hill. Justice Hill is going to make a little bit of an impact this week. Maybe it's just a return game. Maybe it's a couple of passes out of the backfield. But Justice Hill is going to make at least 2 big plays in this game. One out of the backfield, one in the return game. He's going to see something. He might even get in that end zone. I think the Ravens securely handle this one, 31-13. big win for them at home, and to go into Seattle next week up 4-2.
Well, I think that Justice Hill, this would be the game to get him involved because you're going to want to control the clock
Yes.
when you go to play teams like Seattle and teams like New England. And if you can get him firing on all cylinders, you have 3 good running backs plus Lamar. That's how you control the clock. That's how you win football games. Ravens' time of possession, I believe, is first in the NFL right now. So a little bit of that home cooking coming up against the Bengals. Should be a solid win because they're going to need it. They need to be 4-2 heading into Seattle the following week. So that's going to do it for us here on the Football Frenzy. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, go Ravens.
See ya.